It is April the 25th, 2022, and time for our council meeting, 1 o'clock on the dot. I want to welcome everyone today. Welcome our visitors and our guests who will be presenting, and all of our staff who are with us this afternoon. We have a full quorum today, everyone in attendance, and so with that, I will call this meeting to order. Just one quick note is that we are not being live or filmed on Rogers this afternoon, but we will still be live streamed. So with that, I will ask our Deputy Mayor for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Shirley. I will ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us. Thank you. Is there any declaration of interest around the table, Pecuniary or otherwise? Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, Your Worship. Item 9C is a report concerning the Wagner Community Center and Canada Post. My good wife has been doing some relief work at the post office in the Wagner Hall as of late, and I will declare a conflict when we get to that item.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing nothing, then we will move on to announcements. Anyone with announcements for this afternoon? Okay, Deputy Mayor first, and then Councillor Vickers.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I just want to remind everyone about the spring cleanup. This is a Rotary Club event, which will be taking place on the morning of May the 7th, 10 a.m. at the Harbor Pavilion. And the green community cleanup bags will be provided along with gloves. And people can choose an area that they would like to address in Meaford. I can tell you that beautiful Joe Park, the cemetery, and Memorial Park have already been cleaned up. So we're off to a good start. And we look forward to folks coming out to aid the Rotary Club on the 7th of May, 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I will just add to that our municipal staff will be attending this year, and we're all looking forward to participating in this great event. So thank you for that. And Councillor Vickers.
Yep, thank you, Worship. I'd just like to give a reminder to my fellow councillors and staff and the people watching on the YouTube that we're into spring here now. It's going to be a very busy spring for the agriculture community, and the roads are going to be busy. The weather's not cooperating, so we're compressing the planting season into a shorter time frame, and there could be, tractors and equipment out on the roads well past dark. And I just hope everybody can stay safe and take a little bit of extra time and just have patience with the large equipment that we now have in the agriculture community. So just a heads up, if you see a blinking light and you're driving down the road, just slow down a bit and be cautious when you're coming up onto equipment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Vickers. That's certainly important this time of year. I'll take into consideration. So I have a couple. We are pleased to announce that What Matters is the municipal guide is out now and should have been delivered to your homes. This is our second edition, and it's full of important information and updates on municipal services, exciting events we are having, and programming. We did have some feedback, however, that some people may not have received one in the mail. And if that is the case, it's likely if you have requested no junk mail, then you won't have one delivered to your door. That is not to say that what matters is junk. It is not, absolutely. But it is how the system is set up at the post office. So hard copies can be picked up at the Municipal Administration Office or here at Meaford Hall. And of course, a digital copy is available on the website. The second announcement is we have a scheduled power outage coming up on May the 1st from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. as Hydro One completes scheduled work. This is required to safely complete electrical upgrades and connection to the new Nelson Street booster pumping station at the Meaford Hospital. The new booster pumping station started in the spring of 2021 and is very close to completion at this point. The project is part of the Municipality of Meaford's water servicing plan in order to increase water distribution to the urban area of Meaford. You can find more information on our news section on our website, of course. The third announcement is Meaford's Memorial Park is opening soon. And as you know, parking passes will be required for all visitors to the park from May 15 to September 30th. There is no charge for residents, of course, and parking passes are available for free at the administration office beginning on May the 2nd. Weekend pickups of these passes will be available directly at Memorial Park office from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. beginning May the 21st. Again, more information on the parking pass program can be found on meaford.ca/page-a-park. And that is all the announcements I have, unless someone has something else. Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to public participation. And as mentioned, in previous meetings, we really welcome and value the public input that we have, folks who want to come and present to council on an item of their choosing, or somebody that has some thoughts on an agenda item and for a delegation on that item at the council meeting, or for questions. We just ask that anyone wishing to address council, please alert our clerk's office for a date and time, and so that we know you're coming. And this afternoon, we have one presentation, and it is my honor and my pleasure to welcome Grey County Warden Hicks and CAO Kim Wingrove with a Grey County 2022 municipal update. Welcome, folks. So glad to have you.
Good afternoon. I'm getting things set up here for short guys.
Know the feeling. Just to let everyone know, masks are optional at this point, especially when you're speaking.
So thank you, Your Worship, for giving us the opportunity to come here today and provide this update. For those who don't know me, I'm Selwyn Hicks. Everyone calls me Buck. Please call me Buck. And I'm the Warden for Grey County. I'll be turning things over to Kim Wingrove, our CAO, who will do the meat and potatoes of the presentation. But I just wanted to say that during my first term as Warden, as you'll know, Your Worship, I had the privilege of having a tour of your beautiful municipality and to learn a bit about all of the municipalities. In fact, I did tour them. And so this time around, I thought I would come and actually pay a visit and try to do a bit of an update. I've got some other things in my calendar that's preventing me from going to all of the municipalities, and I won't talk about that. But while I was doing my tour in my first term, I discovered a real gem here, and it's your Memorial Park. And I know that I've bragged about it at County Council several times, and I've camped there, I think now 3 times. But this year, I got to tell you, there was that timeline that you had to get in to book your spot. And I didn't get lucky this time around. So this year, Warden Hicks will not be camping at Memorial Park, but that's okay. My computer just didn't work properly, so I missed my chance. But you've got a real gem there, and I know it's the buzz of the camping community, so congratulations on that. And with that said, I'll turn things over to our CAO, Kim Wingrove.
Welcome, Kim.
Thanks very much, Warden Hicks, and good afternoon, Meaford councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to update you on the work that's happening at Great County. It's been a long time since we've made one of these delegations, and one of our priorities this year coming out of COVID is to reconnect with our colleagues and our stakeholders in a face-to-face way whenever we can. I'd also like, before I start my presentation formally, to offer sincere thanks to both Mayor Klumpus and Deputy Mayor Keaveney. You do a wonderful job of keeping this council and the public up to date on county council news. And I have a sense that perhaps some of that happens on your own time. And I really do think it's valuable, and I very much appreciate all your efforts. So I'm going to start off my presentation today with just a few observations by way of context. The past 2 years of the pandemic seem to have accelerated trends that we were just starting to see back in 2018 here in Gray. Now, I know that you're seeing growth here in Meaford, and what our data is telling us is that this is happening across the county and happening at a faster rate than what we have ever experienced here in Gray before. This growth is primarily due to in-migration. But one of the interesting things that we're observing is that there's been a real conversion from seasonal residents to full-time occupants. So having these homes occupied on a full-time basis, I think is something that is very healthy for our communities. We anticipate that this growth will continue when we look at what's in the pipeline as far as site plans and subdivision approvals. We see nearly 9,000 new dwellings on the books, which would translate to over 20,000 new residents. Now, we have no way of knowing how quickly this will come to fruition, but it's certainly something significant for us, given that Gray's population was under 100,000 for a very, very long time. So this uptick in growth is something that I think we need to pay attention to. It certainly has implications for service planning, not only in our local municipalities, but across the whole broader public sector. And we're making every opportunity to share information with our partners, like the school boards, for example, to help them to plan appropriately for future growth. So I wanted to talk about a few other trends that we're observing. Back in 2019, the county implemented its community improvement plan, which provided an enabling framework for our member municipalities to support economic growth and investment. Meaford was a leader in this area. You had your own CIP before the county ever had one, and we benefited from your experience and your learning when we put together the county plan. But I'm really happy at this stage, 2.5 years in, to report that for the 6 municipalities that have adopted the program and implemented their own CIP, the county's investment of $540,000 has resulted in a private sector investment of over $1.6 million. So that's exactly the kind of return on investment that we were hoping to secure when we put the program together. Another part of the CIP was to support the development of rental housing. And again, I think you're aware that until recently, there have been virtually no new rental accommodation built in the county, with the exception of near the resort area. But when we talked to the development community, they told us that exempting some application fees and providing grants in lieu of development charges would make a real positive difference to the financial viability of these projects. Rental housing has a really long payback period. So to be able to do something on the front end made a real difference. And I'm so happy to report that in the 2.5 years in, the CIP has supported over 500 new units of rental housing. And we really look forward to all of these being completed and occupied. In addition to the CIP work, another I will attribute mainly to COVID is really a growth in entrepreneurship and remote work. Gray's always had a significant small business economy, and by last count, we now have over 10,000 businesses in Grey County, and 70% of them are sole proprietorships or home-based. So we really recognize the contribution that these businesses make to our communities and support them through programming at Sydenham campus. The Business Enterprise Center is there for people who are getting started with their business, and Catapult is there for those that are really trying to build their businesses take them to the next level. But all of this growth in the knowledge economy, I think, again, stands us in good stead for the future. The last point on this slide is about the GTR, or the Grey Transit Route. This started a couple of years ago with a provincial seed funding, and then last year Council agreed that they would support a proof of concept beginning April 1st this year until the end of the year to enhance the service levels on the GTR. And poor Adam and everyone at driver's seat, who's our contractor to supply this service, I think their phone started to ring off the hook. It's a service that seems to have met a need, and it's really taken off. So we look forward to seeing that continue to grow and thrive over this year, because at the end of 2022, Council will need to make a decision about whether they want to continue to support that enhanced level of service or revert back to the level of service that was originally supported by the province. Unfortunately, there are some challenges that we're facing, or some trends that we're seeing that are less positive. Certainly, the rising cost of living is a concern for everybody in our communities. The lack of affordable or attainable housing has created real problems. It's pushed the wait list for county housing to out over 5 years. And to quote Anne-Marie Shaw, the Director of Community Services, they just keep coming. So we have a lot of work ahead of us in that regard. We're also seeing a rising incidence of mental health and addictions issues. The wait time for treatment and the loss of life to overdose are tragedies that play out across the country, but I'm sad that we're not immune to them here. Another challenge that we face is the lack of childcare spaces. We have approved spaces available, but we can't attract and retain the registered early childhood educators that we need for those spaces. Right now, the wait list for a licensed childcare space is 850 children. So we're working hard to try and address that. Overall, just the steep increase in construction costs and the supply chain issues that I think all businesses are facing have had a real impact on the county's business. We're going to have to look carefully at our long-term capital plan this year to try and reprioritize projects and ensure that we're sticking within the resource budget that we have available. So while COVID kept us away from visiting you in person, it didn't keep us away from trying to get some work done. And the next two slides are really a lot about some of the plans and strategies and projects that the county's undertaken over the last couple of years. Certainly age-friendly community strategy and action plan, the housing action plan. We upgraded our growth management plan with some of those numbers that you saw earlier. That supported an updated development charges study. So we have a new DC bylaw as of January 1st this year. A new cycling and trails master plan that supports investment in active transportation around Grey County. And in response to the real challenges that our healthcare sector is seeing in attracting and retaining registered staff to help them, Council saw fit to provide support to Georgian College to implement a new 4-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing program in Owen Sound. So really the first of its kind. You can take a whole 4-year BSCN degree in Owen Sound, and the county's $1 million is supporting the renovation of Georgian to put in new state-of-the-art training labs and classrooms for those nurses. And I really encourage you, once they get a little further along, there'll be opportunities to come and visit, and I hope that you'll take an opportunity to come and have a look at that. The first class of students starts in September of 2022. Some of the other projects that are on the go, we just the council just approved the climate change action plan. So it was really happy on Earth Day to be able to celebrate all of that. There are many, many different initiatives under that plan, including an electronic vehicle strategy and a whole other host of things that will be rolling out in the future. In response to the mental health and addictions challenges, we've struck a task force to take a look at those and see where there are opportunities for the county to support better access to care and getting people the help that they need. In the immediate term, led by our community paramedics, we've started something called SOS, or Supportive Outreach Service. This is the county, CMHA, the Mental Health, Graybers Health Services, the United Way. This is street outreach. We have people on the ground right now in Owen Sound, in Hanover, in Chesley, in essentially Bruce County, meeting people where they are on the street, trying to build some rapport, getting them connected to primary health care, and helping them to overcome some of the challenges that they face with not having housing, not having food, needing addictions counseling, needing ID, a whole host of things. There is a report coming. This is something that's only started very recently, but the stories and the success that they've had in getting people into treatment in that is really quite phenomenal. We do have a program to attract and retain childcare staff. Another big project that I'm not going to talk a lot about today, but I should mention, is the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace. So that's the long-term care home in Durham. In addition to the new 128-bed long-term care home, there'll also be an assisted living portion to that as well, because we know that that's in terribly short supply around the county. And so that's a huge project that will see occupancy in 2025. Our capital investments in road infrastructure continue on, and I would like to thank this council for your partnership around the County Road 7 work. This is the kind of collaboration that creates efficiency and saves money, so thank you for that. I also wanted to mention that staff are working together, and there will be a report coming shortly to county regarding the Holland Chatsworth Bridge. So I know we haven't talked about that for a little while, but it is happening. Next year, we hope to strike a task force to look at the outstanding recommendations from the Transportation Master Plan and make some decisions to get those resolved. And while the solid waste management study didn't make it into the county's plan for this year, we are watching closely for the outcomes from the provincial producer responsibility decisions, and we'll be bringing that back next year. Community safety and well-being is a big project. The SWIFT projects all need to be done, that broadband infrastructure in the ground by 2023. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening. And I just want to assure everyone that the big primary piece of work for county staff this year is to bring all of those plans and projects together to create a summary of common themes and priorities that will then be the basis both for bringing a new council up to speed, but also form the basis of a new county strategic plan that I think we'd be looking to get started with later in 2023. Economic development and tourism is always a significant part of the county's work, and they've been busy consulting with member municipalities on an updated investment attraction strategy that will look at, as I said, the knowledge economy, arts and culture, and I think things that would be important to Meaford. There's a lot of great work happening at Sydenham as we grow that facility to meet its goals for innovation and skills training. And just on that one other note with regard to tourism, one of the things that we saw during COVID was a real uptick in visitation to many of our outdoor attractions. And in some cases, it felt a little bit like we might love them to death. And so what we've done is we've struck an outdoor management group that's the county, member municipalities, conservation authorities, MNRF, et cetera, to really look at those most popular attractions and think about what investments could be made to support them to remain viable and sustainable and provide people with the best possible experience. So this means things like parking and signage and waste management and porta potties and all that sort of thing. So rather than spending money promoting the area, we're putting the county's money into improving the wonderful attractions that we do have. So this is just a visual of some of the construction projects, the big construction projects that are happening this year. And I did want to just touch one more time on the housing and homelessness plan. I can't emphasize enough the recognition that having a safe place to stay has to come before mental health or other addictions treatment or getting employment ready or staying out of the legal system. It's our priority, and some of the most barriered folks that we're trying to help really almost require a one-on-one consideration. We have a by names list now to work with that. We have a situation table to deal with those crises that people are facing. We've put people in motels and hotels hundreds and hundreds of nights over the last 2 years. And our work really is to get these people the support that they need and get them into the county's regular housing or the new supportive housing that we're building in Owen Sound. We have had some success in getting new builds. There's the list there of the new units. And as I say, the future plans include another big build in Owen Sound, another build in Dundalk, and the future project here in Meaford. And it's just the budgets that you see, and I think the emphasis there is just on the significant portion of the county's budget that goes directly into supporting people in our communities to live healthy and happy lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. That's great. A very concise but thorough update on all of the work that's being done by our county. Very much appreciated that you and the warden have joined us here today, and all of the good work that I know Deputy Mayor and I really enjoy our time together with you back in person now at the county table, and it really is very exciting place to be. So thank you so much for your and the warden's leadership on all of this, to pull all of this together, and for joining us here today. And I will open it up if council has any questions. If Councillor Bartley's off the mark here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to personally thank Buck and CEO Wingrove for supporting the municipality and the county, the great leadership, and I really appreciate it. Now, you mentioned the Holland Chatsworth Bridge. Which bridge is that?
21 and 22.
So it's the twin bridges.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on anything at this time or no?
I think that where we are now is really examining what the county can do. We need to bring this back to county council now that it's been determined that one of those two structures should come under the county's consideration and capital plan. We need to work through that, and because there are two, we need to work carefully with Meaford and Chatsworth, so everybody's coming along together.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Hicks.
Your worship, thank you very much. And I just wanted to add my appreciation to Warden Hicks and CAO Wingrove for joining us today. It's wonderful to have you here with us and for sharing with our council the work of Grey County, because it is immense. And I often think, our local people just don't have an opportunity to really have a consistent knowledge of what's happening at the county level. So it's really wonderful that you're here with us today to provide that. And I very much appreciated both the mention of the bridges and of a future affordable housing project here in Meaford. And I know there isn't very much to share at this point, but just the fact that you're mentioning it, that it's in your presentation, is just really, really good news for our community, because we know, along with the need to provide housing for folks suffering with mental health issues and addictions, that we also need housing to attract a workforce. And every community in the county is struggling with the same situation of needing to attract workforce to support the services and the new entrepreneurs and businesses that are coming to our communities. So we can't solve that issue until we have the housing. So it's really wonderful and reassuring to know that as lower tiers, we have the support of the county in that regard. So thank you very much again for being here.
And Councillor Vickers.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I would agree with you, Mrs. Wingrove, that we do have two very fine county councillors that represent the municipality of Meaford. So I think it's important to recognize our two representatives there too. And I thank you for the work you do. You briefly talked about your waste management strategy. And I think you said it was getting put off for another year.
The Meaford, as well as Owen Sound, had both expressed interest in the county undertaking a solid waste management study. So we did consider that, understanding that that's to do it properly is a significant project that would take a significant amount of time and investment. We had originally considered doing this as part of the municipal modernization programming and the funding that was available there. We weren't able to make the timelines work for what we felt was required to really do a good job of this. As well as I mentioned, the province is still working on some of its legislation with regard to recycling, and we'd like to see where that lands. So the intent is to bring this discussion back to the incoming council, and we'll see which way how the land is laying at that point, and think about what the most appropriate course of action is for Grey County at that time.
And if I may put my little plug in, I think we look at garbage and waste as something that we have to look after, when I think it could be looked at as a resource, and we need to stop thinking about just burying this waste in the ground and start using it till there's, you start out with a great big pile of rubbish and you end up with a little wee tiny pile of rubbish that actually needs to be looked after. So if I can just encourage, we brought it forward from Meaford, and it's something that I hope that does get traction. I realize where I would like to see it to go needs to be almost like a multi-county operation sort of thing. By the time you take in incinerators and recycling of plastic and that sort of thing. So I know it's a big project, but hopefully it can keep gaining a little bit of traction, and the other municipalities that maybe do have landfill sites shouldn't look at it that, well, we have our landfill site, so we don't care. I think we got to look at garbage in a whole different light, and not just to continue to bury it, to make something of it and to use it as a resource.
Exactly. I think there's some good news for you in the climate action plan. Certainly that plan does touch on circular economy. It talks about biogas production. There are a number of initiatives there. I think that's start to get us down that road as well. So yes, the work, it's important work, and it does need to continue.
Yeah, and if we don't start somewhere, we'll never get anywhere. So thank you.
If you didn't miss that, it was Councillor Vickers who started this impetus on our council. So we appreciate his efforts in this. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions that I'll ask one and then digress for other council members that come ahead. Thank you, Ms. Wingrove and Warden Hicks, for coming over and giving us your presentation. It appears as if the good folks at Grey County are very, very busy these days. There was a bullet line on page 9 under economic development and tourism priorities, and under the investment strategy note, it mentioned foreign direct investment. And I guess up until 2 or 3 months ago, I had thought very much about foreign investment. But a couple of months ago, I heard a radio report about how foreign investments, especially in real estate, have been driving the price of our housing market up. And in particular, it mentioned a lot of this foreign money was laundered. Just lately with what's going on in Ukraine with Russia, and that action being basically condoned by China. Are we talking that high level of foreign direct investment, or I'm hoping not? Can you tell me a little bit more about what this foreign direct investment pertains to?
Yes. And I think where we're shifting to is an investment attraction strategy. And that strategy is being developed with input from all of our member municipalities, as well as other key stakeholders in the business community. I think your points are well taken, Councillor Greenfield, and we want to ensure that our communities are growing and prospering in a way that is going to really make a positive difference in the lives of Grey County residents. So we want to understand where we should be going, where we should be targeting our efforts, and what the most appropriate role for the county is in that. Certainly, every one of our member municipalities has their own economic development resources and plans. Our job is to support those, not overtake them. And so that's a big part of what building this new investment attraction strategy is all about.
Thank you for that. That makes me feel better.
Good.
I don't see any further questions. Oh, I have one more.
If I may, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
On page 12, you mentioned future Meaford affordable housing project. Can you give us any more details about that?
Not a tremendous amount. Excuse me. When Meaford came to an agreement about the payment in lieu of taxes matter, and those funds that were to come to the county, as you requested, we've put those in a reserve to support a future affordable housing build in Meaford. With all affordable housing builds, finding the appropriate location and securing all of the necessary funds is a challenge. And that's the work that is ongoing right now.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, yeah.
I just, Kim, I recall that I think I heard something that the county is going to look into direct election of county councillors. Whether that was real or not, I don't know. What I do know is that there is quite a disconnect between ratepayers and their second tier. And I'm trying as a councillor to educate people about, what exactly county council does and how valuable it is. But anyway, is there any possibility of, and what's the sort of pros and cons of that?
I lose track of time, but I believe it was 2 months ago that the clerk brought forward a report on county governance. And in that report, it laid out a number of opportunities and options that county could look at. One of those was direct election of some county councillors on an at-large basis, if you will. Many of those kinds of changes require a triple majority. So the majority of council, the majority of the lower tiers, and then the majority of all the lower tiers. So those processes take a bit of time to work through. We wouldn't have enough time to be able to have made any, and there was really significant changes in time for the election in October. So we laid out a timeline, and the resolution that County Council passed requires staff to bring those governance matters back in front of County Council in the first year of the new term.
Okay. I'm not.
Once it gets political, you get the warden in, I guess, right? I dare say there's probably never a term of county council where some sort of reform isn't at least discussed. I can tell you that people have had discussions with me about directly electing a warden, about directly electing councillors, hybrid, where you might have, say, each of the mayors at the lower tiers being directly appointed, and then you would have election of the other 9, perhaps. So lots of ideas on the table, and I'm certain that it will come up in the new term as well. But the clerk did do a very good job of, and if you get a chance to see that report, you might want to take a peek at it, because she did a very good job of looking at what's happening in other places, what the ideas are. And I think those are things that can be reviewed by the new council next year.
Well, thank you. I don't see any further hands, and I really want to thank you both again for attending today and for such terrific information to share with us. Thanks again, and we'll see you Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we do not have any deputations on agenda items this afternoon, nor do we have public questions. So we'll move right into council inquiries. Hey, Councillor Vickers and then Deputy Mayor.
Sorry about that. I was thinking that the deputy mayor was going first. So my question is to the fire chief, and it was great having you here. And so last week I tried to get to the new burn permit section. I like having a good fire every year to kind of clean the place up a little bit. And I noticed the new bylaws hadn't the application hadn't been or aren't online to get the new burn permits. So just wanted a bit of an update. And what do I do? Do I just, if they aren't there, what do I do? Just fill out the old burn permit and help me along, I guess.
Yeah, no problem. So we were supposed to actually launch the software as of Monday coming up, but unfortunately due to, this Monday, but unfortunately due to COVID and some staff shortages, we've had to push it out a week. Basically, as long as you're burning safely, and if you're doing a large burn, just like the old system, you'd fill out a burn permit and just submit it so that we know that you're doing it, and then we'll reach out to you when it's time to launch the new software, which you'll then go on and pick your new permit.
Yep.
So 7 days. Technology works when it's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for that, Chief. And just want to welcome Chief Jeff as our counterpart in the ITFD Fire Department. So thanks. Any further inquiries, Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. And I see Director Boyd is not with us today, so I'll ask you, Mr. Armstrong, if I may. We heard from CAO Wingrove about the new county climate action plan. The green is the new gray, and I'll be speaking to it in my county updates, and the goals are quite lofty. And I just wondered if you could comment in relation to our own official plan update and our own climate emergency that Councillor Bartley brought to this council on November the 18th of 2019, kind of how it all comes together.
Yes, thanks for the question, through your worship. As I've indicated, we have been waiting for the county to develop their climate change action plan as the first step. Our next step, the municipality on the official plan side, will be to incorporate policies that aren't already there, because I know that we have dealt with climate change under the current official plan. So we'll be looking at that in our official plan and updating those. In addition, we'll be looking at either collaboration or moving forward with certain elements of climate change based on the county's action plan, then also some local actions that we believe to appropriate. So we'll be reviewing those. There's elements of our asset management planning that needs to incorporate climate change. There's our site plan design standards, which implement climate change elements. So we'll be looking at all of those going forward as we develop those programs.
May I just?
Yes, please go ahead.
Your worship, thank you. And thanks for that,
Okay.
Robin. I just wanted to add, thinking of the goals within the Grey County plan of a 30% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And I know that's been amended and I'll speak to that later on. Do we think it's possible that those goals are appropriate for Meaford as well?
I believe they are, but we'll have to evaluate in how we implement them. We haven't done that analysis on how we can achieve that yet, so I can't say for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Kentner.
It's a question either for the CAO or it's a transport question really. So maybe Ms. Wiley can answer. I just shortly after the new Sykes Street Bridge was opened, I think in 2019, there was a bit of an accident in which the northwest abutment of the new bridge was damaged. And I just wondered if it is ever going to be fixed or repaired. It's more of an eyesore rather than any kind of an issue as far as the strength of the bridge is concerned. But
through you, Madam Chair, we are definitely aware of it, and it has been captured through the OSIM reports that are done on the bridge. So you're right, it is more of a aesthetic issue, but that's not to say that we can't have anything done about it. But I think we're actually ultimately waiting until everything to do with our contractual agreements are complete with the contractor who did the work, and then the OSIMs will be completed, and then we'll have the opportunity to fix anything else that comes out of that.
thank you.
The Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and this question's to Rob. With the potential of the TCE project, pump water storage facility proceeding through the environmental stage, is there any idea on how the municipality would maybe look into how a community betterment for the community kind of enduring the if we have to endure this construction phase of the project and actually having it in our municipality? Is there any idea how we could look at this and see where Meaford could maybe benefit from this?
Yes.
Over to you, Rob.
Through your worship, it is definitely something that we believe we need to be considering as part of this project. I think it's very important that we ensure that it's separated from our commitment to review the project based on the environmental assessment process. We have to make sure that's that, but at the same time, I've indicated that as CAO, my responsibility is to make sure that if this project goes, that this municipality will benefit to the greatest extent that we can benefit from this project. It really comes down to timing. If council's very interested to hear about it, I'd maybe suggest that council might consider a notice of motion directing staff to bring forward a report in this regard.
And I think I will be bringing a notice of motion further on in the meeting towards this subject. So thank you.
I've made a note of that, so.
Okay, thank you, Your
Thank you.
Worship.
Anything further going in? Okay, seeing nothing further for council inquiries, we'll move on to 8.8 in our agenda. Motions and bylaws for decision. The first part, of course, is our consent agenda. We have 2 items on this list before that we have seen at the last council meeting, and we can choose to vote for all of these, for these 2 together. They are by bylaw 2022-26 is a memorandum of understanding with the Meaford Chamber of Commerce for visitor information services within the Big Apple. And the second item is the COM 2022-12 is a declaration of Christmas on the Bay event as a municipally significant for the purposes of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario Special Occasion Permit Guidelines. Are there either one of those that anyone wishes to pull as to discuss separately? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Bartley. All in favor then, this pass, and that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we have no items for consideration this afternoon, so we'll move right into Committee of the Whole. With a mover and a seconder, please, to this, Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bell. All in favor of moving into Committee of the Whole, and that is carried. Okay. 151. So our first item for discussion is CAO 2022-21, our commercial patio on municipal land policy. The recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council enact a bylaw to adopt the commercial patio on municipal lands policy, and that we enact a bylaw to amend the 2022 fees and charges bylaw appropriately. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bartley, Councillor Bell. Any discussion on this? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Armstrong, I wonder if I could ask you, we have along our restaurant strip a number of new restaurants as well as businesses. And if we assume that each one of them wanted to have a patio, would it be a first come, first served basis, or how might we accommodate everyone along that stretch?
Thank you for the question. I guess the first thing we need to do is figure out who's interested, because until we know the scope and who's willing to partake in the program, especially now there's going to be a cost. We need to figure out who. I think what it's a case of is we as staff will try to ensure everybody can be fit in. We may have to limit the availability of area to certain restaurants who may have enjoyed a larger space to ensure that everybody can fit in. So that'd be something we'll have to evaluate based on needs and the constraints that we have with regard to location.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the first time that I got to have a read through this proposal for the lease agreements and so on for sidewalk patios and for the summer was at the BIA on the 20th, and there were some questions that were asked at that time, and the municipal representative that was there did their best to answer some of the questions. So I'm gonna ask at this council meeting a couple of the questions that were brought forward at that time. So in the report, it talks about coverings. And the question was asked from the BIA at that time, no overhead structures. And the question was, does that imply an umbrella?
To Your Worship, I believe that we do allow umbrellas. The previous structures that blocked visual were quite significant, and we prohibited those through the design guidelines. But obviously, sun, there's that protection of the sun, and I believe that the guidelines do allow. Unfortunately, Janet, who is leading this, is more aware of the actual provisions, but I believe that we do allow the umbrellas.
All right, yeah, because thank you, Mr. CAO, because at that time, Janet couldn't really answer that to that group. And if I may, Madam Mayor, having an engineer do structural certification, has that always been something that has been done, or is this something new? Because as I read it, you could have a platform which is equal to the depth of the sidewalk, but for that structure, you would need to have an engineer say that it could do load bearing. Is it new, or we always had that?
Through Your Worship, we've always had the requirement for an engineer to design. That's if the design of the patios maybe I'll take council back to the original intent of this back in 2015. When we came forward with this program, it was mirroring some other communities that have developed a patio program. And at that time, the LCBO regulations only allowed that you couldn't pass a public area to get from the restaurant out to a patio. So that provision required patios up against the building. And in doing that, you would have to construct a public sidewalk walkway that would project out into the parking area and not back in. We wanted those because it was part of a public thoroughfare. We wanted them to be engineered and structured. Obviously, with our downtown, that didn't really work for very few. I think the Leaky Canoe was one of the ones that originally wanted it. And based on the number of entries into the building, they could get 2 tables. The cost just didn't justify. Now with the change in legislation allowing you to cross a public area with alcohol, it now becomes more advantageous to have the patios out in the parking spots. Those just need to be reviewed from a building code point of view, not an engineer point of view, because they're decks. We do want, however, if someone does want the other and it does facilitate, then the new walkway would need to be, because there's certain, we'll have to ensure it meets accessibility requirements from a width point of view, and there's quite a number of elements that will need to be considered in relation to that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Armstrong. It's good clarity on that. Thank you.
Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. Just a couple of points. I really think that the addition of retail is a great suggestion and opportunity. And the only thing I've noticed on Facebook is people saying, let's ensure that somebody who gets the space uses it. But I think that's great. And I also think that staff has taken a thoughtful approach to the pricing. And I think it's not going to really prevent any retailer or restaurant from participating. And I think that's very important. So thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any further questions at this point, so I'll call the question. All in favor of this recommendation going forward, and that is carried. Second one is for in community services, COM 2022-13, as the fire quarterly report. And the recommendation is that we receive this report for information purposes. And I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley, Deputy Mayor. And we will welcome our chiefs duo today.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. I actually had asked, we had talked about coming out together for the yearly reports, and then I dropped the ball and forgot to invite them. So moving forward, the plan is for the chiefs to be here for each of the quarterly reports moving forward, as well as the yearly report. I thought it'd be fair that if you have questions for me, there's a pretty good chance you have questions for the chief of the ITFD. And I think it really shows that we are working close together and ensuring that we're really protecting Meaford as a whole. It wasn't in the report because it was past the quarter, but I just wanted to say that about a week and a half ago, we had our first training session in 18 years together. We're developing a better way of doing rural water for Meaford, and we had a pretty incredible night. It actually ended up on Facebook, mostly positive, but just showing that we are working together.
Thank you for that, Chief. And I just want to comment how wonderful it is to see this collaboration and joint presentation. Long overdue, and we really appreciate seeing both of you here today to give us an update on our report. This will be a recurring theme, and I know you didn't take offense the first time, Jeff, so we'll welcome you formally now. Any questions? The chiefs, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I just want to add to your comments, and Councillor Bell in particular will know how special it is to see you both standing side by side and smiling. It was a long road, and we are just over the moon joyed to see the two of you standing here before us together. And I only have one question for you, and that is, can we come and see the new rescue truck?
Absolutely. If you wait, hopefully less than a week and a half, we'll actually have both our pickup trucks replaced as well. which are special built. They're replaced under the lease program. So I'd like to be able to show those off as well. So you'll be able to see the new fleet right across the board.
If you could send us an invitation, that would be most appreciated.
And I'll make sure coffee's on.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to you, Jeff, to you and Andy, congratulations on your getting the jobs. I think it was definitely the right move, and congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for all the support over these few years and working together and building that relationship. Just one comment with working with Courtney and with Meaford is we did our first training session as he spoke, and both departments have great members, strong, great for both communities. And I think with us working together and our members working together, you're going to see a pretty strong service. And we've had the chance to do a couple calls together with them, and you can see the intermingling of the members is growing every time we're out together. So it's just positive for both of us, and it's nice. It feels good to come out and on the positive side of things.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jeff, and congratulations to you both. I know that that it's not been easy, and we really value your efforts that you both have made to make this such a good working relationship. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, I was remiss when I made my initial comments. I would like to add special appreciation to our CAO, Rob Armstrong, who really was particularly important in the process of bringing the two departments together. And Rob, I just wanted to thank you for all of your efforts in that regard, because that's what made it happen, was all of us working together.
Well said. I'm not seeing any questions for you.
I like that. Perfect. Thank you
So
very much.
we are happy to receive this for information purposes, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next one is COM 2022-14, the Wagner Post Office Agreement. And the recommendation reads that the Council and Municipality of Meaford authorize the use of Wagner Hall as a local post office for as long as the Wagner Hall Board wishes to continue the facility use agreement. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Kentner, Councillor Vickers. And it is noted that Councillor Greenfield has left the council table. Any comments, questions for staff? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This was going to be done later on in the year, and I expressed my concerns that it needed to be happen shortly because the postmaster that they were about to hire needed some sort of agreement. I talked to Matt, so the clerk's department put it together very quickly, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Any questions? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So in the report, it was noted about snow removal of the actual boxes they access. And it was noted that really the desire is for the Wagner Group to make sure that that's accessed. The report said that there was not available staff from the municipality to do that. If we could just have a little comment on removing snow, to my mind, in a small area.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, through your worship. Thanks, Councillor Bell. So in the past, before the post office was put into the Wagner Hall, our operations department actually plowed the parking lot out. Obviously, the hall was only used on weekends, and it wasn't used on a daily event type of thing. So after the post office was put in, the snow removal became a bit of an issue because we were doing it to our standard, and they had requested a little bit of a higher standard because of the Wagner Hall. So because of the post office, sorry. So what had happened was the operations department went out and cleaned out the lot, and I actually sent our guys out pretty much on a daily basis to make sure that the access points were all cleared off and salted off. So yes, we did increase our service level. So on a going forward basis, if this is going to be something that's going to stay for a number of years, we will work with the post office and the Wagner Hall to make sure there's a good collaboration support that way.
Thanks for that, Rod. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we did have a Wagner meeting, and they want to thank you for the job you do out there. And the new postmaster's not adverse to picking up a shovel and shoveling the front walkway. And we're going to have supply salt for them. So it's just if they get the main thrust first thing in the morning done, they seem to be going to be able to look after it the rest of the day. I think it's going to work out all right. And again, thank you.
And one more quick comment, we're talking about winter time here. Summertime, Wagner Hall Board used to have an individual out there that used to cut their lawn and the grass out there for them. Unfortunately, that resident actually moved on sound, and the Wagner Hall Board was actually paying somebody to do that. I've actually stopped that practice this year and put our municipal grass cutters on that now as to ensure the insurance coverage was proper. So the municipality will be paying that.
It's good. And again,
Very
thank you.
good. Thanks, Ron. I'm not seeing anything further, so I'll call the question. All in favor of this recommendation, and that is carried. Councillor Greenfield, come back and join us. Okay, we're on to D, Development Services, DEV 2022-06. Is a 2021 annual building report. The recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole receive this report for information purposes. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put this on the table. Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bell, thank you. And questions, comments of staff, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question for you again, Mr. Armstrong. The report speaks to a considerable amount of funds going into reserves last year because of the significant growth that we are seeing in the municipality, which is terrific. But I'm just curious to know that should that continue, which we expect it might, considering the development that we see before us, and this reserve potentially will continue to grow. Does council eventually have any access to this reserve, or does it just no?
Yeah. To Your Worship, in accordance with the Building Code Act, this reserve can only be in place for building. In particular, if the municipality was to have a year where you don't meet your targets and it's a slight blip, you have those funds to reduce any potential deficit in doing so. Plus, I think you're going to see less of a surplus going forward, mostly because we know we need, and through budget, we sort of presented, we need additional staffing and additional vehicles to continue delivering the service based on the amount. So we're working through our new chief billing official who started today, and we'll be working with him on recruitment of the inspector and what they need to deliver the service based on the demand that we have.
Okay. Anything further for staff on this one? I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving this for information? That is carried. On to financial services, FIN 2022-04 is the municipal investment performance. And again, the Committee of the Whole received this report for the municipal investment performance for information purposes. Councillor Bell will move it. Is there a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. And open for questions, Councillor Bell.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. And looking through our investments, as we all had an opportunity to do so, we are, I think I'm accurate on this one. I had a calculation, I think at last council meeting where I was off quite a bit, but I think I can read a report. It's a little over $18 million, verge of 19 million with our investments. But I have a question to Valerie. We talked just quickly before council today. When you see that we have, and I consider this to be quite a good, healthy amount of money, and just at last council's meeting, as a really current example, this council was asked to approve more long-term debt for the library, 1.6 million plus. And so I'm going to ask for comment on the recommendation was for us to incur more long-term debt when we have 18 million plus, and there's one investment portfolio which has $12.2 million in it. And some of the sub notes on that were that they're for general funds, reserves, and I think the cemetery was put in on that. So my question is, when we have, in my opinion, a healthy amount of reserves, why would the presentation be not to use some of that reserve? In using the library as an example, 1.6 million plus, we could have paid for that and still had a really, in my mind, again, a good, healthy amount of investment portfolio. So I'm interested in hearing from you, Valerie, what your thoughts are on why that was presented to council and maybe why we don't dip into that more often, knowing for sure what kind of heavy long-term debt we are going to be facing in the next few years. That's a lot.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Bell. Reserves are set up for specific purposes. So in the library's case, we don't have reserves set for the library for that loan. So that's why we borrowed for that. The other thing with the library is there is still a potential another borrow to come in. But my recommendation is going to be to borrow from reserves so we pay ourselves back the interest and not go outside.
Okay.
Because that's going to be funded from DCs over a 25-year period. The other thing we have to look at is cash flow. If we use all our money, we won't be able to keep our bills going. And the 18 million that's sitting here is part of it is just a bank account. So yes, 12 million is in Meridian, and there's a 2 million in one investment. The rest is not, like the cemetery stuff, we don't have access to. But I do want to bring back a report that kind of identifies when to use loans and hopefully when to use reserves. And I'd like to do that prior to our budget so that we understand when we're offsetting stuff to bring that forward.
Well, that's good. I mean, that shows me anyway that you definitely have been thinking about this, and on the go forward basis, that'll be more education for the sitting council. So that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank you, Councillor Bell. I was going along the same line, Val. I fully understand the reserves that a municipality needs. They say as a rule of thumb, you should have 1 year of the local taxation in the bank. We're over that now. I know there's some municipalities well below it, some are above it, some are double in their reserves. I understand that 100%, and it's nice to have money in the bank. But I too would rather spend some of it on debt. I think we're partially financing a bridge a little bit, the library. And I know all the reserves are diversified into several accounts, but it was explained to me at one time that council could pass a bylaw to converge some of them into one. So I look forward to your report, and I would like to possibly put some of the money towards debt. I'm not wanting to go out and spend it on something else, just slow down the money we're paying to debt. So again, thank you, Councillor Bell, and I look forward to it also.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anything further? Councillor Bell.
Thanks again, Madam Mayor. And it is important for a sitting council to understand it's sort of like magnifying your own personal finances. I understand that it's so much easier, or somewhat more easy, when a municipality was to apply to the province of Ontario or going through for grants and things. If you don't have anything, and we were in a bad place 2010 and before, we didn't have that. And we now have a healthy outlook where when we go to do things, they're going to say, well, are you managing money here in your municipality? And I think we can answer the question that we're managing money in our municipality, and we're looking healthy in that aspect. So when we go to make applications for loans and grants and the province takes a look at this particular municipality, it's like your personal endeavors at a local bank. You know, you go in there and you ask for a lot of money, and if you ever didn't have any, they would say, thanks very much for coming out, but we really can't do too much for you. And I don't think it's any different when it deals with the province and a municipality. So it's really nice to see that we do have money, that we have this coming forward, and our investments. What was it? Over $500,000 in interest, 508,000 plus. So in times like this, with interest rates not being so great, we were 3.18%. So not too bad in a time when things are a lot tighter than that. So I just want to bring those couple of comments out, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Val, I have a question, if I may. I'm just curious about the One Equity Fund. Certainly very happy with the return on our investment on that. And I'm just wondering why we are not maximizing the amount that we could put in there.
I think it's from your investment policy. You can only put approximately 15%.
Correct, but we're at 10.6%.
And to be honest with you, I didn't catch that till later on. So we may up that, but I do know, checking it just recently, we are losing money right now in the one fund. We did very well last year, but right now we're not.
Fluctuates with the market, yeah. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, Councillor Greenfield. I missed your
No,
hand. I
actually,
spoke before I saw your hand.
your question was going to be my question, Your Worship. So, thank you.
Great minds think alike.
Ladies first.
Anything further? Thanks very much for this, Val, these reports. Certainly very good information to have in our back pocket. I will call the question. All in favor of this information? And that is carried. The next one is FIN 2022-05, an annual development charges and treasurer's report on that regard. And again, it is to receive this report for information purposes. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bartley. Comments, questions for staff? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll address this both to Valerie and Mr. Armstrong. I just wondered if you could update council. We don't see in the report mention of community benefits. What is happening with, do we still have community benefits as part of DCs, or what's going on?
Your Worship, we haven't implemented community benefits. We are actually still operating under the old bonusing provisions under the Planning Act. We'll have until July of this year to continue operating that. That's why when we brought the Legion project forward, we had a bonusing provision for them to contribute to Legion Park. And as we consider other ones in advance of that, I think it's actually, sorry, I said July, I think it's September that we have to, and we'll have our new development charges bylaw in place at that point. We've been talking with Hempson, our consultant who does development charges, on whether we want to do a community benefit charge applicable. Based on recent discussions with them, and we will get them to explain it, but they are not recommending that we utilize the community benefits because it would have very little applicability in our community as it relates to the new limitations that are being placed on it, versus the benefit we could get wouldn't even be worth the effort in doing it. But I'll get him to explain that through the process of the development charges, and he's the best to do that. But right now we're still operating under the bonusing provisions, which community benefit replaces.
I see. Okay.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rod has left, but our development charges into recreation is quite healthy, and it was last year also, and I like that. I've had questions asked me from the parks committee and different people in the municipality. Are we doing anything with Center Street Park? Got any information or a meeting on that, or?
To your worship, we'll have to confirm on the status of what's going on. We have a number of parks that we've created master plans for, and those master plans are being built into our new development charges, so make sure we're collecting funds. But I would need to see what these were specifically for and what we're doing with regards to.
Okay, thank you. We did have a meeting a few months back where council turned down the chance to put most of the development recreation funds into Center Street. But I'd just like to know going forward, is that dead in the water, or are we still looking at it? If you could come up in the near future with a.
Yeah, we can update, through your worship, we can update council on where that is.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any further hands, so I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving this information? And that is carried. And the last one in this block is FIN 2022-06 is a long-term debt update. And again, to receive this report for information purposes. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that? Councillor Kent, thank you. Councillor Vickers. And comments, questions for Councillor Bell?
Well, thanks again, Madam Mayor, and to Valerie. So this is sort of the area that I kind of alluded to when we were talking previously about the health of our investments when compared to where we're sitting currently with our current debt. One of the things that I want us to consider, and we will be considering, is the heavy requirements that are going to be before Sitting Council, the remainder of this term and well into the next, is some of the really heavy duty projects that are listed in this report. One being bridges. We've had our state of the infrastructure bridge report a few years ago. It hasn't changed too much. Basically, the report says to us that we could be looking somewhere around $17 million over the next 10 years. So every year, 1.7 million, that's just dividing that up. Say again, a couple of $1 million just in bridges. And the other one is our wastewater treatment plant that we have talked about here before quite a few times. The report said possibly $14 million over 6 years. Again, another couple of $1 million a year. And in our report, we had a calculation that was presented to us that our debt repayment load could be approximately $5 million a year. And Valerie, if you could just expand a little on how our municipalities' limit is calculated. I read about the terminology, the annual repayment limited by the province, but there was a couple of areas in the report. And so just stating that our municipality could hit 5 million a year, if you could expand on that just a little, I'd appreciate that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Bell, I'll try. So I don't like debt. I don't like debt at my own house, to be honest with you. So I really, like I said before, I would really like to review all of it as a whole, which way to, whether we budget through reserves or we budget through debt or whatever. The calculation that the province does, they take all of our numbers and then they come up with what our net revenues are. And that's 25% of what they think we can afford. I don't think we want to get that close. And that's why I'd really like to review the whole projected amounts. If we get there, it's because we have to. But I would prefer to see how else we can afford to buy or pay for some of our things going forward.
Yeah. Again, that's kind of
Healthy
comforting.
attitude.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and certainly along those lines, and thank you, Councillor Bell. A phrase that sticks in my mind that this council has heard many times is growth pays for growth. And we're seeing here that we need to invest to support growth and attract growth. So one figure that's in the report is that by 2031, we could be looking at $33.5 million in debt. And I'm wondering, Valerie, does that take into account, and we heard our CAO Wingrove speak about the growth expectations. Does that take into account how we expect to grow by that time? And do we have any sense that kind of debt, what that would do to taxes? And
through you, Madam Mayor, to talk about that, so we'd have to still see what our growth is like. I know for building permits, all those building permits that we've seen on that report today from last year, those assessments won't be here yet. So, and I believe it's not 2023, but it's 2024. Hopefully we'll get a new phase in assessment for the next 4 years. So hopefully by that time, our growth will be showing a better amount than it is right now. I think this year our growth should go up quite substantially because some of those assessments will come in. So I think, say November, we might be able to find out how much growth we had for this year. And then that'll help us also budget going forward. Maybe I'm not answering the question exactly, but I think it's a big picture, not just that little how much we owe now or how much we're going to owe. I think it does matter on how much assessed value and how many building permits are issued too.
And the CAO has further comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the what Val was talking about was our annual increase in assessment, and we've sort of been identifying that to offset tax increases. The principle of typically that is, as we grow, there's the need to provide more services, and that increased assessment allows us to continue to deliver the services that are required. In addition to that, development charges is probably the bigger thing that's most important with regard to growth pay for growth. We know we need to expand our sewage treatment plant. The existing people in the community do not need that plant. It's the growth. So we just need to make sure that the development charges that we're collecting from development will pay for not only for the expansion of the plant, but also the interest on top of it, because our current development charges does have funds in there for the sewage plant expansion plus interest. That will be updated with our development charges bylaw coming forward. As we need to expand parks, that expansion of parks will come from development charges. That's the true growth pays for growth comment that we want to ensure that our development charges. You hear other communities are relaxing or ensuring development charges are way low so they can entice development. That's something that our community back in 2010 decided that we were no longer continue doing. We're going to make sure that growth pays for growth. It should be the new development that's paying for those added services. So that, again, that development charge background study is just being finalized with the consultant. Will be coming forward in June, July with the update with council with the public meetings.
thank you.
Anything further? Council, I'm not seeing any. So I will call a question. All in favor of receiving this for information purposes, and that is carried. So moving on to our memos, the first one is a delegated authority for Q1 2022. Are there any discussions required for that? Very comprehensive there. No questions? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Might as well comment on it so it doesn't slide by, but it's showing from January to March 31st, we're actually about $350,000 below budget. So would that just flow back into reserves for the rest of the year?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it would. If that, but realizing that we're only halfway through, or a quarter of the way through the year.
Yeah. Thank you. It's better than being the opposite side of it.
Okay. Thanks for that. Seeing nothing further, then we will move on to the council directions for Q1 2022. Are there any comments for staff on that? Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Smith isn't here. So Margaret, or perhaps Mr. Armstrong will want to jump in. I was just curious, on page 3, there is signage on municipal lands. And on page 6, there's the diversity report, and they're both listed kind of as either NA or TBD. And I just don't want them to get lost. So I'm just wondering what the thinking is behind listing them as not available in TBD. Mr. Armstrong, thank you.
Your worship, the first one I'll speak to is the signs on municipal lands. We actually have made progress on that in the last week, where we're working with our GIS person to collect the data on all of our signs. So that's the first step in that process. And then we will be sending out the invoices, because the direction was to charge in accordance with our bylaw for all signs. And so that will be our next step in doing so. So we are just collecting the data right now. So it is in progress.
Thank you.
The other question, the diversity one, I think you were asking about.
Yes, so page 7 shows the TBD.
We'll have to get back to council on that. I think we're still trying to internally determine who can lead that and work with that. So we'll get back to council on that one.
Thank you.
Councillor Kentner.
Thank you. Through your worship, question for our CAO. It's on page 8, I think. No, sorry, page 9. Just the question of development sunset clause. I know that probably the wastewater treatment plant issue will probably act as a sunset clause on some of these people who have sat on developments for a long time. But I'm thinking of the one at I keep forgetting the name, but directly opposite the water treatment plant, the western entrance to Meaford. That has been, like all of the services been in there, but there's been no indication of any action at all. It would be an example in my mind of something that would certainly be worthy of a sunset clause if we had it.
Your worship, so the sunset clause provisions would or something being considered as part of the official plan review. It speaks to limitations of planning approvals. With regard to that development, though, it's already approved and registered, so we cannot apply any sunset clauses planning wise, because they have all their planning approvals, they're registered, the service they're in. The biggest thing for us on that is the infrastructure renewal fee that will be applicable to them, and the letters will be going out with regard to an open house coming up in the next month with regard to start paying for water and sewer, which hopefully can be the catalyst to get them starting to build.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? That I think brings to a close those directions. So we'll now move on to updates from members appointed to county council committees and boards. And as usual, Deputy Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very
County
much, Your
Council
Worship.
report.
And yes, we had that wonderful report from Warden Hicks and CAO Wingrove, but I'll speak to our last meeting, which took place on April the 14th. And council met again in a hybrid manner, which is working really well. After the land acknowledgement was read and the minutes adopted, Dr. Era gave a COVID update. Even though we've seen a recent rise in cases in Grey County, Dr. Era says the virus is manageable. Our hospitals are not overloaded, and there are currently, at that date anyway, no ICU admissions. Wastewater testing, we often hear about that in the news, but that's not accurate at all for rural areas, of course, because so many are on septic systems. Fourth doses are available and highly recommended. Dr. Era feels there's no need to return to restrictions. We should just continue to be vigilant. A bylaw was passed to permit tax refunds for eligible heritage designated properties in the city of Owen Sound. Meaford has a heritage district, as we know, but we don't have designated properties. In Owen Sound, these properties will see a 20% reduction in taxes. The funds are recommended to be used to maintain the heritage character of the properties. Grey Roots Museum had a very successful 2021, all things considered, with nearly 6,000 visits. In the 130 days the museum was open. The new Morriston General Store is under construction and should be ready for viewing later on this summer. More information can be found at info@greyroots.com. County Council heard an in-depth report from the consultants at Ickley Canada, who have prepared the Climate Change Action Plan for Grey County. The project began in December of 2019 and has been inclusive of considerable public engagement, a council task force, a survey, lower tier input, and much staff involvement. Initial targets have been set, the plan has been developed, implementation is underway, and results will be monitored. The vision of the plan is the County of Grey will be a clear and visible leader, taking actions to address climate change throughout municipal operations and the community. Much consideration is being given in the areas of highest emissions, livestock sources, fleet, and buildings. The targets were revised by council, who unanimously supported the goal of reaching net zero by 2045, 5 years ahead of the recommendations within the plan. The four main pillars of the plan are compact development, afforestation and habitat protection, expanding waste diversion and agricultural decarbonization, and $9 billion was the commitment of the recent federal budget, so funds should be available for further implementation. Council would like to see an immediate shift to hybrid or electric fleet options. However, at this point in time, as CAO Wingrove informed us, the trucks are simply not available. Jessica Linthorpe presented on behalf of the Clean Energy Frontier Program. This organization is funded by Bruce Power and is focused on bringing green energy-based businesses to Grey and Bruce counties. In 2016, there were 13 major suppliers of the Bruce located in Bruce County. In 2022, there are now 62 suppliers located across Grey, Bruce, and Huron counties, bringing a municipal tax impact overall of $233.5 million and an economic impact of $1.43 billion. And those statistics came from the presentation from Ms. Linthorne, so that's pretty impressive. John Peevers spoke on the progress of Bruce Power's refurbishment project. Unit 6 is on track and Unit 3 will get underway in 2023. Bruce Power has been producing cobalt-60, an isotope used to treat cancer and to sanitize medical equipment for 20 years. Recently, Bruce Power began production of, and I'll pronounce this incorrectly, I'm sure, lutetium-177, which is used to treat prostate cancer and certain tumors. Bruce Power is the only supplier in the world of this isotope, so that is very special. And I made mention at County Council, and I will at this council as well. I thanked John Peevers at Bruce Power for the delivery of a trailer load of sanitizer 2 years ago, literally now, when sanitizer was completely unavailable for businesses, and that was greatly appreciated in this municipality. That came to the Chamber of Commerce. The county's procedural bylaw has been updated to provide the new council with a revised document to begin their term. And that was it, Your Worship, unless you wish to add anything further.
Very thorough as usual. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll move on to the Heritage Advisory Committee, and over to you, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. We met very recently and had an update on the official plan review. Niagara Planning Group has been holding their workshops. I was involved in 2 of them last week, and there's 2 more tomorrow and Thursday afternoons, 2 until 4. I'd like to see more people at those, but they're online, and but I think they've been very productive, and we're looking forward to getting on to the next phase where we'll be discussing, with the planners, some of the possibilities that we have some input to.
Mhm. Councillor Greenfield,
Harley may have more.
did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, just, yes, if I may, and it wasn't really, at least not yet, heritage related, although it is certainly proposed in the heritage area. And I invite my fellow council members, if they haven't checked it out yet, the Georgian Bay Harbor Limited, the 5-story condo development that has been proposed basically east of the library down to the harbor. And everything's still in its infancy, but it's certainly another interesting urban residential project that is coming to our council's desk. And yeah, it'd be a good idea just to take a few minutes just to check out what information thus far is available for our council members.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Bartley, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report on the ITFD. We did not meet in the month, as you know, but just a little update on Wagner Hall. The municipality did do a fantastic job renovating the upstairs. The group from the hall had a really good artisan show on Sunday. It was a lot of people. They have spent a bunch of money building the post office. That was their own funds from the board. They bought all new chairs into the downstairs, hundreds of chairs. They put 6 new toilets in. They're spiffing up the place quite nicely. Fireworks have been bought for Canada Day. And they have, I don't know how many times they've rented out the hall for April already. But it's busy just about, well, every week for sure, but sometimes 2-3 times a week. So they're going strong and they're really energetic people.
That's great.
Thank you.
Good report. Nice to see them involved. Councillor Bell next, and then I'll go back to you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a quick update on the BIA. So we had the conversation quickly as this council heard about the sidewalk. That was part of the conversation. But what I want to especially inform council of is the Christmas on the Bay activity that was talked about before. I think really terrific, good news. We all know that volunteers are the strength and the heartbeat of any community. And if you don't have a strong base of volunteerism, you can have all the best plans that they're lovely to talk about, but if you just don't have the people to make it happen, it's simply going to just fail. Well, I'm here to tell you that they have got 8, and I wrote down major players for this event. And each one of those major players has got a base for outreach so that each one of them has support. So when I listened to that, I told them that volunteering is extremely important and that I can see this getting started and happening, and they have got the nucleus for success just with that information at that last BIA meeting. So just wanted you to know that.
Great.
There's some solid energy.
Exciting project ahead. Anything further? Oh, yes, Councillor Greenfield. Back to you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'd just like to follow up on Councillor Bartley's report about the show on Saturday in Wagner Hall. I was fortunate enough to attend, and I want to add my congratulations to the hall board and to the artisans who came forward to present their various handicrafts. I think there were about 35 or 40, Steve, would that be? And like the hall was packed. Downtown Wagner was packed. You couldn't get a parking space. And I just think, I was thinking ahead, in the official plan discussions, we have rural settlement areas coming up, and I think you just have to relate back to Saturday and think about the potential that our rural hamlets and so on can have in our municipality and the role they can play. It's great.
Staff, Councillor, Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, thank you. And may I add to Councillor Greenfield's comments, congratulations to Mrs. Greenfield on her retirement from the post office. I know it will be good hands. And again, the artisan market was fabulous. I went with a friend and it hit both of our wallets pretty hard. So it was an excellent show.
Dangerous place to be with a friend. Yes, outdo each other. I just have an update I wanted to bring to council with regard to the council had approved our participation in a regional mayor CAO forum. And Rob and I attended the latest meeting on Thursday this past week. The purpose of this forum is to share information, to understand regional issues and to find ways to collaborate with our neighbors in South Georgian Bay area. The terms of reference for our participation in this forum does not require funding. It's just an opportunity to discuss issues of common interest within our neighbors. The leadership and the staff time required to facilitate the meetings rotates among the participants as well. And this past meeting was chaired by Mayor Measures from the town of Clearview. I just wanted to add that a lot of the conversation at this table does not impact our community specifically or significantly, but it's a good place for us to be to understand what our neighbors are, challenges our neighbors are faced with. And the major topic of interest in that regard since the beginning of this forum has been the transportation corridor that brings visitors and new residents, in fact, from the GTHA region to Blue Mountains. The volume of traffic and the speed limits, road conditions, and responsibility for maintaining them has been a huge topic of conversation. And a delegation has been, and visits from the Ministry of Transportation has occurred, focused or at least led by the town of Blue Mountains, focused particularly on the Highway 26 from Thornbury to Collingwood, of course. Another topic that was brought up at this past meeting was the Georgian Triangle Humane Society, which we use with the help of Holly Hines and her bylaw enforcement for animals that need either protection or a home, a temporary home. I actually did visit the Humane Society in Collingwood and to learn more about the services they provide, including, I didn't know, education sessions with our local school children on care and protection of animals. They are planning a campaign, a capital campaign to raise funds for a new location in Collingwood that will serve our community as well. And they will be bringing forward a presentation to our council in the near future. So with that, I would look for a mover and a seconder to move out of committee of the whole, please. Councillor Bartley, Councillor Bell. All in favor? At 248. And that is carried. So down to councillor motions, 10.1 notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Vickers?
Yeah, we'll get on the floor.
Sorry.
So yes, so as I made the question before to our CEO, basically I'd like to bring a notice of motion to ask staff to start proceeding with a community betterment if the TCE project proceeds and is hosted by our municipality. I would like to know what the possibilities could be for benefits to the whole community.
Okay, we'll see that in 2 weeks' time. All right, are there any other notices of motion to bring forward? Seeing none, we'll move on for motions for decision, and we have 3 today. First one, again, Councillor Vickers, is the Ontario Land Tribunal. I'm assuming you'll put that on the table for discussion.
Yes, I will.
And is there a seconder for that one? Councillor Bartley, thank you. Did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, I would like to speak to it.
Please go ahead.
I've done quite a bit of research into the Ontario Land Tribunal and different reasons why development is slowed. And I guess the more you think you know, the more you realize you don't know. So I had quite a good conversation with Rob there for about a half an hour one day, and we talked about it and we were working through it. And I came to the realization that, I don't know as much about it as I maybe should. So the original direction where my notice of motion was going somewhat changed. So it basically came back to, maybe all of us at the council table after the next election would do well to learn more about planning. I know since I've been on council, I've learned a lot about planning. I thought I knew a fair bit before I got on council, but you just realize how little you actually know once you get into the planning processes that we've had to get into here in this last term. So basically, therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to bring forward a training and planning on the planning processes, including, should put my glasses on, including Ontario Land Tribunal appeals and other regulatory framework options as part of the orientation for the 2022 to 2026 term. So I think, this will give us a bit of education. It might be, better time spent than some of the other training that we took in the last term. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you for that. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Vickers. Paul, this is good that you brought this forward. I know that we have had occasions where we have made decisions on council that did not support a staff recommendation moving forward, and that was challenged. So we've seen that. Then this council has made decisions on recommendations where we have supported recommendations and that's been challenged. So I think this is really timely. I think this is really good. And I hope that our planning department will be able to advertise this, that this is something that is key, because I know that a lot of the residents, when we hear sitting here on council, some of the questions that folks have about a proposal, really, they end up being in those questions that end up being the site development, what we're going to put on for their restrictions or their compliances. So bringing this forward, I look forward to it for the next sitting council. I think this would be a really good opportunity to learn more about the exact subject matter, the Ontario Land Tribunal. So well done. I look forward to this.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks for that, Councillor Bell. Any further comment or questions? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. And the second motion we have is under the auspices of Councillor Ross Kentner, request for, we got that wording here. Updated noise bylaw, new air quality bylaw. Councillor Kentner, I'm assuming you'll put that on the table, will you?
Yes.
And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bell. All right, do you wish to speak?
And
to
it's
it?
been brought down to its simplest form in just a few short paragraphs here. So I think it's, I explained my thoughts on it 2 weeks ago, but this makes it clear that no matter what kind of development it is, the potential is there for both air pollution and noise pollution. And we don't have an air pollution bylaw yet, and we need to update our air pollution, our noise bylaw. So I would hope that my fellow councillors will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kentner. Any comment? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks, Ross, for bringing it forward. It's probably necessary. I'm just hoping it doesn't handcuff the municipality, because what's good for one is good for the other one. So any sort of building in the municipality, whether it be downtown Meaford or out in the outskirts, would fall under the bylaw. And I hope it doesn't shut down some of the construction that wants to take place in the municipality. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Councillor Kettner, for bringing this forward. And I just wondered if I could ask for some input from staff. Thinking of Councillor Bartley's points and thinking of having lived in a construction zone myself this past year and living with dust, just what level of change to the bylaws might we be looking at here?
Through your worship, I think first off, we're going to have to investigate with regard to what options are that we legally can put into a bylaw with regard to it. I think what I'd first like to do is speak to some of the current provisions that we do have through our property standards bylaw. We do have certain levels of control. In addition, with our development agreements, so site plan and development agreements, we do have provisions for dust and noise control within those. I know there was the concerns about the one project that commenced last year, and we actually were able to utilize our existing provisions under our agreement to do enforcement and get control of that in that sense. But all I can say is we're going to have to investigate our options because we don't know what opportunities are available to us at this point in time with regard to those updates, if this proceeds. Yeah.
And if I may, I certainly appreciate that and stated that at the outset. I think it's important that these be really well researched and something that can be enforced. Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Councillor Kettner, for your notice of motion. I notice it mentions the word construction, and I guess quite often along with construction there goes noise. Everything from a D8 digging and excavation to a neighbor using a little 2,500 watt generator in his backyard, and so there's a lot of area to cover there for our staff. But I'm wondering about air quality. Now we've just dealt with a open air fire bylaw, and wood fires especially produce smoke, which can be obnoxious for some people. But are you thinking air quality? Are you thinking light? Lighting? Are you thinking that should be a part of the air quality, or I'm just wondering because excess of light in an area can be a problem. So I'm just wondering were you thinking about having that included in the research?
I mentioned it in my sort of notice of motion that that may also be a factor. I think it would have to be dealt with in a separate bylaw, perhaps. I think there's not that much likelihood of that being an issue, except in connection with Ontario Pump Storage, and it would depend on many factors whether it becomes an issue. But for the moment, I think the things that are most injurious to health are particularly air pollution and noise pollution secondarily.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before we vote on this, Councillor Kettner, are you directing this to the D&D property, or every person here has a house, and when that house was built, there was dust, there was noise. If they're going to build something behind the library, they may have to pound steel stakes 50 feet to ground. That will definitely be a noise bylaw. Is that what you're wanting to shut down, or?
I introduced this primarily from the standpoint that if Ontario Pump Storage goes ahead, it will be the largest construction project anywhere in Ontario. It will involve blasting of the Niagara Escarpment. It will involve literally hundreds of the heaviest trucks we have ever seen. And they will be in action for a period of years. So I think that particulate pollution, mostly from trucks actually, but also from blasting and construction of a project of this magnitude would definitely lead to problems unless we have a really good bylaw.
So are you directing through the mayor, are you directing this to the DND property, or is this for the full municipality?
It's for the whole municipality. And I was aware, as our CAO has referenced, the construction project for the new long-term care resulted in a tremendous amount of air pollution for a period of time until it was brought under control. This applies, it's more than anything, it's about the health of residents of the entire municipality. And for some people, air pollution in particular can be very, very serious.
Okay, I just wanted to know what direction you were going here.
Councillor Vickers.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Kentner. And as you talk more about your notice of motion, I get more and more concerned about it, to be honest with you. I feel like it's being put forward to almost weaponize a bylaw to prevent construction of progress, in my mind. I wonder what happened back in the 1960s when the Bruce Nuclear Power Station was being built. I'm sure there was disruptions and there was pain and there was agony over that. But can we always stop progress in the name of health? And what happens if the Bruce nuclear power generation hadn't proceeded? Look at the situation we would be here in Ontario, and I'm afraid that this is just going to be another way of weaponizing a bylaw to prevent, in my mind, progress in the community. So if you want to say no to everything, then we should just say no to everything. To try and use bylaws to prevent progress and development and infrastructure that we badly need in this province, in this country. I guess you could look at the DGR over in Teeswater. Another thing people talk about health and everything else. They consider it to be safe for it to be on top of the ground, but they don't want it in the ground, sort of thing. So I really get cautious when bylaws like this come forward, because it seems to me that there's an ulterior motive of the reason to have the bylaw there. So for these reasons, I struggle to support your motion.
And I appreciate that. If I may, through your worship, I think we can have progress and also have health. And I think history has shown that if you don't look out for your health, you'll get the progress, but you'll also get deaths. And I think that we have to protect our populace, especially, and I'm only just using this as an example because all construction and projects can lead to difficulties of this kind. This is a mammoth project, and I'm not attacking it. I'm not against progress. I'm just saying, we should offer our citizens the best protection we can. And we know very well that they're going to need it in this case.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Well, as far as updating our noise bylaw, I don't have any problem with that. We're constantly updating bylaws and so on and so forth. As far as a new noise bylaw and a new air quality bylaw is concerned, and the proposed project at the DND Army base, through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Armstrong, our municipal bylaw would have no effect at that property, would it? It just wouldn't apply.
It's Your Worship.
Or would it?
It's Your Worship, as far as I understand, none of our bylaws would be applicable to federal lands. based on my understanding of past history. Unless something was to change federally, I don't believe that our bylaws would be applied to there. And in addition, I think that project up there, as I understand, it's going to be heavily federally regulated. So they'll probably have their own noise and environmental bylaws that will be, or regulations that will be monitored up there. This bylaw, if it goes forward, will only be, from what I understand, applicable to anything off of the D&D lands.
Through your worship, I would just offer that any infractions happening on transport routes to the site would obviously be enforceable by a bylaw in our municipality. Everything I've read about air pollution indicates that the biggest problem is heavy machinery and trucks and their emissions.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Kent. Sir, I want to say this in council and look over at yourself. I don't want to make a vote on something and then later on talk to you out in the parking lot or something. You deserve to be looked at, and we have the ability to look at one another. I have contact a lot with construction companies, as you can imagine, with our business. And, you know, they have a lot of constraints on them, and they have a lot of financial commitments that they have to undertake. And, you know, we can just, all of us, as we travel the roadways, just protecting a small stream, and they're going to do something, how they put stakes in the ground and black earth retaining and sandbags. I mean, they take all of those things into consideration, and the environment is a big key element. And I know that you know that. So when we're looking at doing this and the discussion that I've heard this afternoon, Councillor Kentner, it seems that there is a focus for the development purely up at the 4th Canadian Division. And I don't think, Councillor Kentner, that I will support this afternoon. I understand the broadness of it, but I think that our construction industry has got enough regulations from the feds and the province and the municipality currently for them to obey all of the things that they have to obey and comply with. I think this is another element that probably with what exists, I don't really see it as being necessary to be broad brush throughout our entire municipality. So I hope you appreciate me looking directly at you, and we don't have to have a talk about this out behind your car. So I think this is why we have open council meetings. So I do appreciate you bringing something forward. That's what the business of council is all about.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I feel much the same as Councillor Bell, but I couldn't vote to pass a new bylaw to update the noise and the air pollution bylaw without knowing the full bylaw we have now on the books. I would support staff bringing forward the bylaws forward so we can in depth go through them and talk about them and see if they need upped. I would support something like that, but just to say that we want new bylaws, I can't support until I actually know what I'm voting for or against.
Through your worship, we do not have an air pollution bylaw. There is nothing on the books to protect against air particulates and the products of projects of that magnitude. We do have a noise bylaw, and I think probably it was, I think, brought out in 2012, and probably is due for a review. But I appreciate the comments of everyone, and I just want to stress I'm not against development. I'm trying to keep an open mind on pump storage, but I think that going forward, and I'm just going to cite one example. We know that there has been an enormous rate of cancers in the Beaver Valley, and there is hardly anyone doesn't attribute it to pesticides. And so there's so much information now. We've declared a climate emergency, and we're aware of the damage that air pollution causes. So that's my reason for bringing it forward, and I appreciate the other points of view, and I have gone along with staff's recommendation on the motion, which doesn't single out any particular thing. It just says we would review, take a look at an air pollution bylaw and review our noise pollution bylaw. And if you can't support that, then that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Through your worship, I really get somewhat offended by some of the comments that you just made about the agriculture industry and about the high rates of cancer in the Beaver Valley and being attributed to pesticides. I would like to see you provide facts and figures to those comments, because I know in the agriculture industry, we are fighting an uphill battle from people that just say things that have no proof whatsoever. Our agriculture industry is one of the most heavily regulated industry. And to get a pesticide, whether it be a herbicide, an insecticide, or any other kind of product that we use, has to go through more regulations than anywhere else in the world. And comments like this, and maybe I'm getting off track here a little bit, but people are fine to stop the use of pesticides and herbicides inside our own country, and then buy food from another country that uses the same or even worse chemicals. So your comments about the high rate of cancer in the Beaver Valley, I would like you to bring forward facts, not just words, but I want to see facts, because this is what we come up against in the agriculture industry all the time. Roundup is a perfect example of a herbicide that is so beneficial to the agriculture industry, but gets whacked by everybody because of people like yourself just putting out comments that are untrue. And I think we need to look at science more than we need to look at people's opinions and Facebook and the social media knowledge that we have out there. It burns me to no end.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. I think that we are digressing here on the issue in front of us. I wanted to ask our CAO if we have had, or maybe perhaps our deputy clerk here, how many comments or how many complaints we've had with regard to noise, and if that in fact is something that we need to be looking at.
Your worship, that's something we would have to compile. I would say there's a difference between a complaint and a complaint that's been investigated and has been found to be unreasonable. I think that's the type of analysis. And if this was to go ahead, we would include that in our investigation.
And I think from my perspective, there's been very, very few noise complaints made to me. I've had lots of other things, but certainly not many in terms of noise. And I guess I would be very concerned about the amount of effort it would take to even begin to assess and determine standards for air quality from our perspective. So with that, I think we've had a fulsome discussion. Councillor Bartley, you have a final comment?
Final
Please
question.
go away.
Final question. Probably to the CAO or the clerk. So we have 0 bylaws on air quality in the municipality. Is that correct?
Your worship, I would say that it is correct, mostly because we don't have the method to test for if someone's in violation. And that's probably going to be the biggest thing, is if you bring a bylaw forward, you have to look at enforcement and your ability to enforce. And yeah, I haven't heard of a lot of communities that have utilized this in our area. So it would require in-depth investigation on us, how we would do that.
So there was an issue at the long-term care with air quality and we stopped it. How did we stop that?
We knew there was significant dust, so our property standards bylaw and our development agreements that we have on development requires dust control. So we, bylaw enforcement got engaged in that process and required them to regularly water the situation to keep the dust down.
So I think what Councillor Kentner is talking about is mainly dust control, trucks going up and down the road, blasting, earth moving. So we have some controls over dust control.
On gravel roads, we apply calcium.
Yeah, through our existing agreements and that with regard to use of our public roads, that would be the extent. As if it's a gravel road, we provide the dust suppressant. They shouldn't be creating dust on our paved roads or our surface treated roads because they're not dusty.
Okay, so I can support staff bringing forward a report on what bylaws are in place now for noise and dust control and see if we want to take it somewhere from there. But to change the bylaw, I can't change the bylaw. I don't know what we have now. So other than me going into the bylaws and reading them and studying them, I would like to have a conversation on it.
All right. Thank you for that, everyone. Is there anything further before I call the question?
Just for clarification, Your Worship, so is Councillor Bartley making an amendment then to the motion as it stands to request instead of an updated noise bylaw and air quality bylaw to have a report first that would give us some further information?
If it would be okay with Councillor Kentner, I would like to learn more about the bylaws. I don't want them changed. I can't change them till I know more about them.
I think I'm going to go to our deputy clerk with a clarification on that. I think that would be an entirely different notice of motion instead of an amendment to this one.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just in considering our options here, I do believe if we wanted to deal with the motion that's on the floor, I don't see that it's time sensitive. So perhaps we could work with some wording to clarify the intent of Councillor Bartley's somewhat significantly different amendment. I think you'd be replacing the entire motion of Councillor Kentner. So you do have two options here, either to have wording that would replace the current motion entirely, or vote on the motion on the floor and then have a notice of motion perhaps at the next meeting, and we can flesh out some of the details for another approach to this.
Thank you for that.
Through Your Worship, I think I'll just simply withdraw the motion. I
You'll
think that's,
withdraw the
I will
motion?
withdraw the motion. I think that it's clear that there's not enough support, and I appreciate Councillor Bartley's offer or suggestion of investigating, so that suits me.
All right. So this motion is withdrawn. Is that all right with the seconder, Councillor Bell?
I will support Councillor Kentner's withdrawal.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to the third motion we have before us, Councillor Greenfield's request for electric vehicle charging station policy. And I'm assuming Councillor Greenfield, you will move that. And is there a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor, thank you. You wish to speak to that?
Yes, Your Worship. A number of reasons for bringing this notice of motion forward. I'm not going to get into the expanding market for electric vehicles and hybrid. I think we're all quite aware that is with us, and it appears as if it's growing and is going to get much bigger. Certainly, our federal government is aiming for some very complete elimination of carbon emissions in the next 20-25 years. But a couple of things, one locally, and that is the the arrival of the parking lot on Nelson Street, and it is in the works. A new public parking area, and from what I've read, people coming into the area with EVs, whether they're coming to visit family or coming on business or coming just to check out our beautiful place to be on Georgian Bay. A good number, an increasing number of them are driving EVs, and they don't have a place to recharge. Unfortunately, the life of a charge is fairly limited, and so I thought that when we're rebuilding or building the Nelson Street parking lot, perhaps a public charging station could go there. As of autumn of 2021, and I was surprised to read this, there are only slightly over 1,600 public charging stations in Ontario, in the whole province, and just over half of them are in the GTA. So it doesn't sound like they're popping up all over. And as I say, I know people are going to be coming here. Their batteries are going to be running down. They're going to be saying, heck, how am I going to get home? Especially if it's all electric, that's going to be a problem. So anyway, I'm hoping staff can bring us back a report about the feasibility of putting a public charging station at Nelson Street, or perhaps at other locations. We've got a harbor master plan coming forward. There's going to be parking there. That could be a very obvious place for EV charging station in our municipality. On the other hand, I'm not suggesting that these stations be freebies. I want that checked out. I guess I have a bit of a problem with our taxpayers subsidizing somebody who is driving maybe a $90,000 Tesla. I really have a problem with that. So I'm hoping our staff can bring forward the report, and that's what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Comments, questions, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Greenfield. I wish I'd have brought this one forward because this is the future. And I think if you recall, I had comment when we were doing the new library. I thought of the parking lot that was there. And anyway, now, as you've said, with the new Nelson Street one, and I think this is worthy of staff's time to look into. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I can support this, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you for that, Councillor Vickers.
Through your worship, I agree with Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield that some of the questions you asked there towards the end were questions I have the same ones. Who pays for this as it gets bigger and bigger, sort of thing. So will a person that lives a couple blocks away just slip down to the municipal lot, plug their car in, and nobody's the wiser, sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of good information that we could glean from a report like this.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Greenfield, and I look forward to this report. And just to add to County Council, there was some discussion about the charging stations and the fact that Ontario Hydro, as I understand it, is not currently participating. And I know county staff are looking into that, the Economic Development Department and Ranji Scherzer. So perhaps there will be some opportunity for collaboration there. And I would expect that there must be some granting available at provincial or federal levels to install these. So it'll be some interesting learning. Thank you.
I think County Council is exploring that grants for EV chargers. So That's good news. Any further discussion on this motion? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of this moving forward, and that is carried. Okay. We're on to point 11 on our agenda, the adoption of minutes, and the only one we have is the council meeting of April the 11th, 2022. And I have a move and a seconder, please. Councillor Bartley, Councillor Vickers. Any comments, questions on these minutes as distributed? And seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? And that's carried. Is there anything on the communications file that anyone would like to bring forward for further discussion? I'm seeing nothing, so we'll move on to that. To the confirming bylaw. The recommendation reads, be it resolved that bylaw 2022-27 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular meetings held in the month of April 2022 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that. Councillor Bell, Councillor Greenfield. And unless there's any comment, questions on that, I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you very much, everyone. Good discussion and lots of information there to be had. So with that, I will declare this meeting adjourned.